my cousin Matt had invented this product sitting on the beach, drinking a beer out of a red Solo cup. And I've told the story a zillion times, but it's important. He's like he's not wacky inventor by any stretch, but he's like the guy that comes up with a solution to his own problem and then goes and makes it. And this is a perfect example of that. He wants to drink a Corona at a specific temperature from a bottle. That's the only kind of beer he wants to drink. So, on the beach, drinking a beer out of a red party cup and it's 80 degrees in 5 minutes is like his nightmare. So he sees people drinking out of water bottles and just has the idea, why can't I cut one of those in half and pad it and put a beer bottle inside of it? And so he did that. And I was not there for that part of it. He was at my house. We were actually traveling. My wife and I were. So he invented this product that solved his own problem. And over the course of the next 6 months, tried to get me involved in that thing. And to be very honest, I didn't think it was a thing. I didn't think it was a product people would buy. I didn't think it was a product people would buy for real money. I thought it was an interesting idea that would be a bachelor party bridesmaid gift that you would buy at Spencer's for $8. And that's not a business. I mean, it's going to cost $3 or $4 to make. Like, that's not a real company. And over months of his pushing, we were super close at then. Obviously, we're even closer now. But over months of pushing, I caved and said, "Okay, we'll do it. But I will come and do this. We'll do it together. But I want to prove that people are one, interested in it at all, that aren't just our aunts and uncles and moms and dads and brothers and sisters, because that's not relevant. To be clear, it's nice to have, completely irrelevant from a proof of concept standpoint. And then I want to further prove that people will pay real money for it. So we popped up a landing page. I did, super easy, shot a video with a GoPro like duct taped to the outside of it, looking back at your face. And we collected emails on $500 in Google ad spend. And it worked enough to be like, okay, well, I mean, people are at least interested in it, but they haven't paid for it yet. So we used crowdfunding to prove that concept out in the fall of 2013. And it worked really well. Like, people bought it. We did 300% of what our minimum it's worth doing goal was. And then suddenly we had a thing that was proven out that people would pay real money for it.
What was the moment when you realized, because as you mentioned, you were skeptical in the early days. What was the moment when you realized, okay, we actually might have something that will scale?
So I'll come back to that. I would say that I realized that we had something when honestly strangers around the country and frankly around the world, we sold into like 6 different countries, started buying the product. I mean, our crowdfunding campaign was pre-ordering the product at a slight discount to what we expected to sell it for. And we hadn't even made it yet. We hadn't even started the process of making it yet. This wasn't an expensive company to start. We each put in 10 grand in the total of the company. So this was just, do we get people to actually swipe their credit cards that we don't know? So that was the first wow, that's interesting. But it wasn't until the summer of 2014. So fast forward 9 months, we shipped our first orders in January of 2014. We missed Christmas by a week, which was awesome. And in the summer of 2014, Facebook launched their video advertising platform, at least to the masses. And that was the first massive inflection point where it was like, oh God, this is now like a real thing. We would fumble around at $2,000 or $3,000 a month before that. We just hadn't figured out how to market it. We hadn't figured out how to position it. It was a product that you really needed to see in action, because it's like a beer bottle and you put the top on and you screw the bottom onto it. But unless you know what it is, it just looks like a water bottle. Even if the beer bottle's sticking out an inch from the top, it just looks like a water bottle. So you had to see it moving, and that being able to make a video. I shot a video on literally propped up on the beach with hands that come in, you see it in action. And when video, went live on Facebook and their ad platform, it exploded. We went from 2,000 a month to 20 to 40 to 80 to 150, sell out a product. And we did that for the next 3 years. I mean, we got to 8 million in sales in the third year with no employees or investors. We were just reinvesting everything.
I saw that quote on your LinkedIn, and it's pretty impressive. And I was wondering if there was any thought of nomadic lifestyle, or what basically made you to decide we want to go as far as we can with no employees whatsoever?
It
What
was
was
my
the reason
prior.
behind it?
It was the prior experience. It was the medical device company that I couldn't get away from. That was a nightmare to manage. And then we had this health tech piece that generated more revenue than the 10-year-old medical device company in its first year and a half. And it had almost no overhead. It was like, that's interesting. And to be fair, like that was also in the early days of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And I was, the 4-Hour Work Week part is jokey and funny. And he obviously did that for clickbait headlines, which he talks about. But a lot of the methodologies behind it were certainly then solid. And so when I agreed with Matt to go and do this, that was my number one rule. We can go and do this. We'll go and try it and test it, but I do not want to manage anyone. We have to build it in a way that does not require employees. So that was just, we put blinders on from the very beginning. That was our guardrail. We're not going to cross this line. We were forced to solve problems in a way that didn't require human beings to be involved in that solution. And it scaled really well.
Did you end up changing your mind on that, or you basically had no employees all the way until the acquisition?
So the way that I look at these puzzles is that you have to start somewhere, and it's your gut instinct and your emotion that starts there. Clearly, that's an emotional, like, I want no employees is an emotional response to scar tissue and history and past. And so you go and implement that. And that worked for us really, really well. And there's a lot of reasons it worked. Part of it was luck and timing. And then there's a lot of other things that in hindsight we did well. We did a ton of stuff really bad. But there are a couple of things that we did really well that allowed that to happen. But the business got too big. I started getting data back, namely in customer service, when we got to that 8 million in revenue. I mean, and it's basically the cyclical nature of that business. We do half our revenue in the last 6 weeks of the year. So in 2016, we did probably $3.5 or $4 million in between November 20th and December 20th. Like, that's a crazy amount we were selling a product that was $30. Like, that's a lot of volume to not have a team of people. So like our customer service technology and automations, which couldn't be completely automated. We were able to automate about 95% of it, but the 5% that you can't, I was physically having to deal with. And when you're doing 100 orders a day, that's not a big deal. But when you're doing 3,000 orders a day, it's a massive deal. So I literally at the end of that year took a dry erase board and wrote all the things that I was doing on it, because we split the company in half. Matt was responsible for the back end. So our manufacturing, our inventory, like bookkeeping, finance stuff, shipping and fulfillment. I was responsible for everything on the front. So anything a consumer would see, the website, the branding, the voice, the copy, the images, the videos, customer service, email, paid media, like I did literally every single one of those roles. And I didn't outsource them. Like I literally ran every single role. So I started writing those out on a dry erase board and just started circling things that I should not be doing. And the first thing was customer service. And it's, so it wasn't that I changed my mind. It's the business. It was being bottlenecked by my guardrail. And you have to make a choice at that point. Are you going to allow that to continue to happen, or are you going to remove the bottleneck? So we did start hiring.
But I still find it extremely impressive how far you have pushed it before you did this exercise, right? Because even you mentioned at the very beginning that you basically created the first ad yourself, and that you were in charge of the copy, you were in charge of all the promotional materials, etc. And I can totally imagine how, someone hires 10 people to do that job, and then it's suddenly all over the place. So it's interesting to be getting that perspective of seeking efficiencies in terms of like going straight towards the goal that you have outlined.
Yeah, and there's a couple of really important tidbits in there. One is that because I had to learn how to run every role, by the time we did hire, I knew exactly what those people needed to do. The alternative to that is, company XYZ down the street, they go and raise $2 million on some completely unrealistic valuation. And then they go and hire all those people, but if they don't actually know how to run those roles, how do they hold the people accountable to those positions? So obviously it can be done. People do that. You hire really, really good people that know what they're doing. That's great. But that was one thing. I knew exactly when we hired our first head of customer service, I knew exactly what I needed her to do. When we hired our first head of marketing, I knew exactly what that person needed to do. The other is that because we didn't have those expenses, we got to reinvest in the business. Like, because we didn't have those 10 people on the payroll, all of that fixed. This is where companies get in really big trouble early on. Is you go and you hire all these things, and suddenly you've added $80,000 a month in weight onto the business. And if you don't know how the revenue and return on ad spends and all these things have to respond to that, it's how you get in big time trouble. And you learn it the hard way when you see your P&L in 2 months and you're like, oh geez, how are we hemorrhaging money? And then you have to peel it back.